Welcome everyone. Today I'm gonna show you how to connect your Angular application to your identity server because a couple of people were asking me, and to be honest, I don't really know what's so hard about googling the OpenID Connect client. So in this video I'm gonna be following documentation. Since I don't work with Angular, I don't think it's good locking you into this Angular ecosystem, and I generally just don't like it. So nevertheless, let's go ahead and get started. So just to kind of introduce the changes to the project, I have an Angular project here where inside I just have a folder. So this is not an executable or anything. It's just so it shows up in my Solution Explorer, and the Angular app is in the middle here. So another thing I have is I have my Windows terminal running, where in the top right I have the identity server running. Top left or bottom left is my API one, right? So I have .NET Watch run, watching the identity server and the API one. So in case I need to change anything, this is going to get automatically rebuilt. On the left in the main screen here, this is where I basically went, go ahead and create me a new Angular app, right? So this is where I basically kicked off the creation. It took a couple of years to finish, but we're here nevertheless. So we want to connect our Angular application to our identity server. As always, the first steps are find yourself an OIDC client. So this is, again, we're gonna follow the same steps. You have your tech stack, OIDC, client. Okay, same as I did for Xamarin, for Flutter, and for WPF. So Angular, OIDC, client. And here we have it. So it's Angular auth IDC client, same package here, but pretty much all I want to do is get to some documentation or example that I can look. So Damien Bode, you will see him a couple of times when working with these identity server solutions and stuff like that. Him and the identity server creators, they participate in the open source community of all this OpenID Connect stuff. So yeah, here you can see that this is OpenID certified, so you can trust this library. All right. So let's follow through the commands: installation instructions, npm install Angular IDC client. I'm gonna go into here, yeah, and I'm just gonna install. So here I have Angular. Just gonna install that, so you can see that it has installed. So if I go into package.json, every time I change a package, for some reason, the whole Visual Studio just freezes. So any action I do on the Angular project, for some reason, Visual Studio just starts choking. So yeah, here I'm looking for the dependency that I have added, and it looks like it's not there. So yeah, I actually got an error, and that's because there is no Angular project. So actually what I want to do is cd into the Angular app and retry the command. Okay, so seems like that is now finished. A bunch of warnings, and here we have the dependency Angular auth IDC client, right? So now I'm happy that it's in my project. Let's go ahead and start setting this up. Okay, so if I go to the CRC app, again, I'm not explaining anything about Angular. I don't know anything. I know a couple of things, but nothing of worth. We're gonna go to the app component.html, delete everything, and just make a div where I can have a button, and this is going to be my login button, and I also have a call API button. Then I want the app component TS after Visual Studio stops freezing. Yeah, the title, I no longer need the title. Here I'll probably have a constructor, but primarily what I'm after is some kind of login function and call API function. And these are the events that will have to go on these buttons. So click. I'll have to log in here. And for the API, same thing, but call API. Okay, and maybe I will have to put like curly brackets here. I'm not sure. Yeah, and I wanted to do something with this. So let's go ahead and see, how do we hook up this library that we've just installed? So going back to their documentation, I have the quick start section, import the module services into your modules. So Let's see, this is the main configuration, so this is everything that I was explaining before. Yeah, I'm not gonna go over this. I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna go into my app module. So I guess this the app module is like the root node, and we want stuff in our root node. Silent renewals, I explained how that works, so you should be able to figure that out if you watched my other videos. Response type code. So yeah, we will kind of try to put this a little bit at the top. OpenID, and so profile and email, we disable those claims. So what we actually want is OpenID. And if I open up the configuration file for my identity server where I configure stuff, the scopes that I allow is API 1 and 2, so I'm running API 1, so I want to be able to access API 1. So I'm going to request access to API 1. For client ID Angular, I'm just going to rename this to Angular. For the redirect URL and post redirect URL, those can stay as they are. Visual Studio keeps freezing, not sure what that's about. Yes, and the STS server. So my identity server is running on a local host 5000, so I'm not going to be using HTTPS. I can use HTTPS, but that will require making certificates, setting them up, etc. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to go with HTTP. So response type code, we are going to use code with PKCE. Redirect URIs stay the same. Angular, put the ID at the top here. Okay, and then we need the log level and the OIDC configuration server. So we go back to the documentation and we just grab the same imports that that are shown in the documentation. Okay, and then this should compile. So this stuff we will also have to set it up the same for our identity server configuration here, which we will do in a second. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and sort this part out, because this is where you need to do your dependency injection for this module, set stuff up. I'm not sure why they've done it this way. I mean, the Angular. I'm gonna stop hating on Angular at some. For now, you'll have to bear with me that I don't actually want to work with this technology. But yeah, auth module, we put it in there. Providers, again, I'm not sure exactly what all of these are doing. I guess some kind of registering dependencies. This looks a little right. We're missing the app initializer. Where is the app initializer coming from? From angular.core. Let's copy it where the ng module is. Okay. So now this compiles. Okay, so we've set the OIDC client up, and essentially this is what they've done in the quick start here. Next steps are basically surfacing the OIDC service in your component to be able to log in and stuff like that. So let's actually grab the login and ginit and constructor here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the app component. We're going to replace the login here. And in order to have this stuff, we'll have to import the correct types from the correct package. So let's go ahead and grab that. If it's probably worth removing the stuff that I'm not using. So public configuration, remove all that. So use the OIDC security service. And the lambda that is here after the subscribe, let's push this down a little bit so we check the authentication, and then everything is using this observable pattern. So yeah, you have to subscribe. It's not as simple as promises. Okay, yeah, it's authenticated. This is going to return a boolean, and it's going to be either a true or false. Okay, next thing is the login. So this is how we're going to log in. So it seems that we are going to have on our app component, we will be able to press the login button. This is going to go to this login function and should just work. Okay. So before we actually do this, let's go ahead and configure this client for our identity server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for where I had client ID.js. So where I had my JavaScript client. I'm going to copy this part and I'm going to add a copy of this here. I'm going to change the client ID to Angular. So this bit lines up with this client ID. The application itself is going to be running on, let's see, it's going to be npm run serve. So and not run serve, sorry, that's for view. This is going to be npm run start. So at the moment, I just want to see where the application is going to get hosted, so I can copy the URL and put it in the slot for accepted. It'll basically redirect URIs and post logout redirects, etc. Okay, so at this point, the application has started up, and I can see that it's listening on localhost 4200. Let's go ahead, copy the URL. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our project after Visual Studio wakes up. Seems like Angular is harassing Visual Studio for the support that the .NET Core teams provides for like maintaining a template and stuff like that. Doesn't seem to integrate with Visual Studios so well. I don't know. It's maybe something to do with I don't know, like 200 megabytes of dependencies that the node module brings in. Never mind. Yeah, we're using PKCE, the code flow. So the code flow relates to this response type that we're setting here. Redirect URIs. Let's go ahead and change this to be HTTP. So we're basically allowing to redirect to the root for the login and the logout. That's because what we set here. Okay. And then for the course origin, we're going to set this as well. Okay, so because the origin is going to be different because of the port, so we have to register it here. Then API 1, we enable that. API 2 and RC scope, we don't really need that. Access token lifetime, we don't need that. Just use the default one. Allow access tokens via browser to true because our SPI is going to be running in the browser, so we need that to set to true. Require consent is false. This is on the identity server side. We don't need that. Okay, yep, we're requesting the scopes that we have registered. Log level doesn't relate to this, it's just probably logging level for the library itself. If you're going to be changing to production, don't forget to change the log level. Everything else seems fine. Let's go ahead and log in, right? Yeah, so I'm going to save this. You can see the changes are going to get recompiled here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the URL. I'm going to go to browser and go into localhost, and let's go ahead, press F12 and see what's going on in the console. Zoom in a little bit. This one can you zoom in the console. Okay, so let's log in. And here we go, right? So your standard redirect stuff, you get redirected to your identity server. Mine's running at port 5000. So here you will see being redirected. You can see what client it is, etc. So username that we have registered is Bob and password. So if you're new to the repository and you haven't seen all my other tutorials, I highly recommend you do to understand this whole OAuth IDC thing. But we seed our user in the program CS file here, so that is where this Bob password comes from, right? So I'm going to sign in. And here you get a bunch of logging about the token that you have. Again, since I don't use Angular, I don't know about their storage mechanisms. You could probably just save it in your local storage, or maybe you can somehow configure it with the library. I don't know, right? You as the Angular professional will have to decide that for yourself. If you do know a good mechanism, leave a comment. Let other people know. Okay, write a blog post. Write to me on Discord. Maybe I can. I'm not gonna make another video. Don't write to me about Angular. Right. So we have apparently we have our access tokens, right? So let's go back to the documentation. We're gonna scroll down a little bit using the access token, right? Let's go ahead. So we just call the get token, right? And then we have to set it as part of the header. So they basically tell you what to do with it as well. Again, I'm not going to be abstracting my HTTP service into an additional service, implementing all the refresh token stuff. I mean, that's played out too. Do that yourself. If you watch my previous tutorials, then you should know. You should logically understand what to implement. Okay. Let's get the token. Let's get the headers, right? Since I don't know anything about Angular, I will have to Google Angular HTTP client. Right. So communicating with the backend server, just want to see what I need to do. So I need to import some module. Yeah. So I go into the module. I grab my HTTP client. Where do I put it? I have to put it in the imports. Imports. Yeah, so I import it. Cool. And now I can use it? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's grab the namespace again. To the component we go. And grab the HTTP client. Don't have the HTTP header, so... And did they grab it from a different namespace? Nope, they still grabbed it from the same namespace. Go ahead and put this here. The HTTP client, do I have to... Okay, so you do have to inject it. Let's go ahead and it's on new line. Comma public HTTP and inherit from HTTP client. Okay. And now to use the token, yes, I just need to do this get or whatever. So, okay, so something like this. This configure service get config, because this is the configure service. So the documentation basically tells you how to make an HTTP service, like basically how to hide your HTTP calls behind an interface kind of thing, or not an interface in this case, behind a service. So I want this HTTP and I want to call get, and let's just grab this. I'll put this here and config URL. Where I'm actually going to be calling is I'm going to be calling into API1 controller a secret controller, and I want to call it /secret. So my API is running on HTTP localhost 5002. So this is where I want to go. So if I go to app components modules, the URL that I'm going to pass is my API1 URL, and I'm actually going to go to /secret route, which is where I specify this route that is authorized. So once we try to hit this route, it's going to try to extract the token from the HTTP header, from the authorization header, and then it's going to validate it with the identity server. And you can actually see this happen in the logs as well. So, but nevertheless, let's go ahead, and the configuration is set up, so I'm going to leave that. App module seems set up, I'm going to leave that. The page is set up, I'm going to leave that as well. And next thing, we want the HTTP options. So let's put this here, and then to get the results, again, it's observable pattern, you have to subscribe. So let's subscribe, and I guess say data any, so it's any type. And here I just want to console log my API result, and let's just console log our data. We can put a colon here. Did it work? Let's see if it works. Let's go to the terminal, make sure everything is here. So last time Angular has compiled successfully. Let's go ahead and back to the browser, to the Angular app. Let's go ahead and refresh, make sure. Okay, so is authenticated is false, so there is a problem with persisting the tokens, or the cache is being refreshed. So there is probably something that you will need to do to handle saving the tokens, but again, I'm leaving this up to you as the Angular expert. I don't want to touch Angular. Let's go ahead, log in, and here you will see the single sign-on working. So we previously already signed in on our identity server. We don't need to do this again, so this is why we haven't seen the login screen again. And here in the console, we can see our ID tokens, access tokens, etc. Use them as you need them. I explained everything about claims in the like claims from your ID token, access token, what they are, in the previous episode. So go watch that if you are confused about what this is. Right, so we got that. Let's go ahead and call the API, and we get an error. Let's go ahead and see what this is. So it looks like some syntax parsing. We do get the secret message, so we did authorize, which is nice. We didn't, we couldn't manage to parse it, and that is something I looked up before this, obviously, and it's basically we automatically expect to receive JSON, okay, and this happens to live on your HTTP header. So HTTP, if we look at get, we can see that the options that we provide, the response type is JSON. So yeah, let's go ahead and grab these options and just move them into here, and we're gonna say that the response type can also be text, okay, so like that. Yeah, can't really put it on that constant object because I don't know why. I tried that before and didn't work. If you want to explain, if the TypeScript gods want to bless me with the knowledge, go for it. I'm not that interested. I want to keep my dynamicism. Nevertheless, is authenticated true? Let's go ahead, call the API, and API results secret message from API 1. Okay. Again, I haven't explained any of the flows or how the actual obtaining of the access tokens happens here. I do it all on my previous video, so go watch. Go ahead and watch that. This is just about being able to set up your technology stack to work with your identity server, right? And there are a lot of libraries. All the libraries for OIDC clients have been built. If you're going to be switching to Flutter, Xamarin, Vue.js, React, I don't know, Svelte, whatever, there is going to be a library available there, most likely, that is going to allow you to perform an OIDC authentication flow. So again, I'll just reiterate, what you want to look for is your technology stack, OIDC, client. Okay, and that's basically how you connect to your identity server or any other identity provider. Okay, but nevertheless, this is it for this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Leave a like, subscribe if you did. I stream on Sundays and Wednesdays, so if you want to join, don't forget to join the Discord channel. I do all the updates for the streams there. And as always, hopefully I'll see you in my other episode.